Hello everyone, it's Charlton. Please subscribe to my channel, tap the notification bell, like this video. That helps me to keep making videos. I'd appreciate it majorly. So I just wanted to sort of do a preview of what we're looking at today in the bail hearing for Jeffrey Epstein's case, the sex trafficking case. He's accused of sex trafficking of minors, conspiracy to sex trafficking of minors, and today is a bail hearing. Big day, you know. Both his defense attorneys and the prosecutors in the Southern District of New York have pretty much laid out their case for, you know, why he should be released and allowed to be allowed home detention during the trial, and the prosecutors who want him to remain in detention for the extent of the trial. You know, I was surprised. A couple things I was trying to look up. I was just trying to find out what time the hearing is today. I wasn't able to do that. I'm assuming, this morning, but I have no idea. I just don't know yet. So, but I was also surprised to read some other things. You know, and I forgot to look this up because I saw something in the New York Post. News Corp, right? Rupert Murdoch. Okay, which is the New York Post, which I was fairly certain it was part of, News Corp's empire. Rupert Murdoch bought it some time ago. Normally, it slants towards Trump for sure. But I'll get to that in a second. So, I don't want to go over these same things over again about what the prosecutors proposed and the defense attorneys proposed. Other than things I didn't really know before. Basically, Epstein put up his house, the $77 million house, as collateral, and a plane, and agreed to, I think, deregister it, or something like that. Even though I noticed that, because I remember thought of reading that he has two planes, and the prosecutors basically, unsurprisingly, this is Intelligencer, Matt Steeb, aren't buying it. It says, citing his two private planes, multiple homes, small fleet of cars. Southern District of New York prosecutors said last Monday that Epstein's nearly infinite means and tremendous incentives to use those means to flee prosecution mean that he is an extraordinary risk of flight and danger. They added that the bail proposal from Epstein's lawyer is woefully inadequate, and that the scenario puts forth amounts to a private prison. And actually, this judge has ruled almost on similar circumstances in the past that I think was even brought up by the defense attorneys trying to sort of preempt it, I think, saying that it's irrelevant in this case, something to that effect. I'll get to it in a second. A sealed financial disclosure form by Epstein was interpreted by the Southern District of New York as a minimal and token effort that did not accurately represent his wealth, which they stated to be around $500 million, in addition to an annual income of $10 million. They stated nothing in the proposed package would prevent the defendant from transferring liquids out of the country quickly and in anticipation of flight and relocation. I think that was pretty critical right there. That basically it was a very, it didn't even sort of pass the smell test. It sounds like, that he could very easily work around the terms that his attorneys were proposing for bail if, in fact, he decided to flee. That's my interpretation of those statements. But, the judge, who's the judge? His name is the U.S. District Court Judge Richard Berman. He's a Clinton appointee, and he has presided over some big cases, some high-profile cases in the past. Some of his past cases include the Chelsea bomber, Tom Brady's Deflategate suit against the NFL, and a 2016 case of a Turkish-Iranian gold trader involved in money laundering, which bears some similarities to Epstein's circumstances in regards to bail. Berman wrote, because the guy had this wealthy gold trader who was accused of money laundering. I don't remember. I'm not familiar with it that much, just vaguely. I thought that was in relations to coup, or he had some connection to the coup in Turkey, but I may be confused about that. In any event, the individual was basically requesting to remain at home during his bail, and he was more or less offering to finance it, to pay for all the expenses that go along with that. And basically, what this judge, he decided against that, didn't allow it because he was a huge flight risk, because the guy, he's from another country. I don't even know if he was an American citizen or what. And a lot of his wealth and assets were outside of the country. He just was an extreme flight risk. But he also was saying that, that gives you an advantage that nobody else has, that most people can't, almost no people can pay for their own, private prison at home and pay for that, offer to do that. So that's just not fair. Berman wrote at the time that the defendant's request to self-finance his house arrest was unreasonable because it helps to foster inequity, and unequal treatment in favor of a very small cohort of criminal defendants who are extremely wealthy. Epstein's lawyers also cited the gold traders case. Epstein's lawyers did, claiming it as irrelevant, and as he was not an American citizen and his assets were held outside the country. But that's kind of why I was saying up here that the prosecutors were saying that nothing in the bail terms that his defense attorneys presented would prevent him from acting quite quickly. The fact that I think it said he was going to deregister, or his plane, something else, deregister and ground his plane, his private plane, but he has two planes. And the fact that he could very easily move assets around very quickly, and people with giant wealth, they just have immense resources at the disposal, and people willing to help, and etc. So I was just quickly looking up the judge, and I don't want to belabor this. This is a big day. Let me get right to the point before I get too far into this interview. I was surprised to read this. We'll see, man, because I don't got a good feeling. I just don't, but. According to this New York Post article, many experts, most of the experts, it says, think he's not going to be released on bail, that he's going to stay in custody during the extent of the trial. It says Jeffrey Epstein may have millions of reasons why he should be released on bail, but a Manhattan judge is still likely to deny him his freedom at a hearing Monday, experts say. The convicted pedophile has offered to put up his $77 million Upper East Side home and private jet as collateral to guarantee he'll show up for a trial. His lawyer is set to appear before a federal judge Monday to argue he should be let out on bail. Until then, also are promising to fit Epstein with an electronic monitoring device. So it says that even with all the supposed bail guarantees, legal experts told the Post they're not putting any money on Epstein getting out anytime soon. I think it's exceedingly unlikely for him to get bail, said Duncan Levin, a former prosecutor with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn. Levin, now in private practice, said the fact that Epstein is charged with sex trafficking a minor is serious enough to give a judge pause about releasing him. Rachel Myman, a former prosecutor with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan, noted that the judge overseeing the case, Richard Berman, has previously shown little sympathy for rich defendants who offer to put up big money to enjoy the comforts of home while poor defendants rot in jail. And then that references the Turkish suspected money launderer Reza Zarrab, offered to put up a $50 million bond and pay for security to get bail. But Berman shot that down. So, yeah, that's kind of where we are. I don't know what time that happens today. I mean, I was surprised to hear that. I mean, believe me, that's a huge thing. It's a huge thing if he remains in custody during. Just makes it so much more difficult for him to, to fight this trial, and this thing is just kind of like it's just spreading like whatever. It's just because it's now people are coming forward from before, people in New York, people in New Mexico, they're talking to people, they're getting interviews and so forth. And which brings me to, I'll come back to this in a second, and I want to wrap this up. This is all just about a bail hearing that, is still yet to come. I saw this article, when I was driving home from the shore yesterday, and it's in the National Review. It's a very conservative publication, and it says Acosta sweetheart deal likely to foreclose Epstein's Southern District of New York prosecution. Basically, what this person who's writing this article and has a column, who's Andrew McCarthy, who I know of him for sure. He's on talk radio all the time. He's on Fox News all the time. Not all the time, but he's a regular. He frequently gives his opinion on legal matters, and this is a legal matter, but he's a longtime, Republican. Routinely advocates for Republican issues, candidates, etc. He's a friend of Rudy Giuliani. I'm a Republican, okay? And his history is I think he has a long-standing working relationship with Giuliani, possibly. I mean, I know he worked in. I didn't know until I looked it up. He came. Part of his work was as an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. That's where Giuliani came from. A lot of people, a lot of attorneys, if they have political ambitions, or just ambitions, because the Southern District of New York, that's where Wall Street is. It's a massive district for whatever. So, but in this article, he's basically arguing that it's double jeopardy, and that Epstein very very likely could win and not be prosecuted, or because of the previous non-prosecution agreement that was agreed to in 2007, 2008 in the Southern District of Florida, that he can't be prosecuted again for this. And and he goes in at length. It goes on and on. I didn't read every single last little detail, but I read a fair amount of it. And there's a couple things I would say. I mean, the first thing that I thought of when I've read this was, what is his motivation for writing this, Andrew McCarthy? And I have nothing against Andrew McCarthy. I'm telling you, many times when he was speaking, throughout his time in talk radio on Fox, he'd be on the same side of the issue that I was on. Okay, and I'm nobody. I'm just some guy. But I'm just saying, for all intents and purposes, I like the guy. But why is he writing? Why is he taking the time to write this very thorough analysis that basically exonerates Jeffrey Epstein? I mean, who benefits from this article? Okay, former friend of, a longtime associate of Rudy Giuliani. Now you do the math. Okay, so why is he even going through the bother of doing it? He would never, Well, I can't get into the mind of Andrew McCarthy. But another thing, that he fails. Somebody who is an extreme. This guy is, unbelievably bright. Legally and tough, and you could just tell. He's no one you want to mess with. But so somebody that smart. One thing he totally neglects to bring up is the fact that what if other victims come forward? Other victims other than the ones that were part of the plea agreement, the non-prosecution plea agreement in the Southern District of Florida. I mean, when you get one of those deals, it's not as though, if you get some kind of deal, let's say it's on a murder charge, all right? It's not as though, you can never be prosecuted. You could just go around murdering people for the rest of your life because of double jeopardy. You couldn't do that. When there's new victims, that goes out the window. And I understand that. I don't know who's listening on the indictment for the Southern District of New York. I assume it's many or all of the same victims, whatever. And it's interesting. This is why, you see this picture here? This is why the attorneys, the prosecutors in Southern District of New York made an announcement to the public during the press conference of this, of this indictment that, anybody else who has had, has been a victim of this person, or, pleading with them to come forward, tell their, they'll listen to them, etc. And they have. Okay, so, and many have, and I do believe, at least according to federal prosecutors preparing a bail hearing fight Monday say evidence against financier Jeffrey Epstein's is growing stronger by the day after several more women contacted them in recent days to say he abused them when they were underage. There's another woman. I don't think she was part of that that was interviewed on the Today Show. I forget her name. I don't have it up here now. But that's pretty much the preview of the bail hearing. Again, I was sort of shocked to see this in the Post that, you know, the legal experts believe he will not receive bail, because I kind of thought he was going to. And it's a big deal, man. It's huge, because it just makes it all that much harder to get out in front of anybody who might potentially be coming forward. It just makes it very difficult, much more difficult than if you're, you know, if you're at home and able to work and work freely and in private and etc. with all that. All right, well, that's the story there. Thanks for watching my videos. Please subscribe to my channel. Give me a like down below. I'll see you in the next video. Later, man.